Sarah Latham. I am president of the Danville Historical Society. The Historical Society, in partnership with the Danville Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and the Danville Museum of Fine Arts and History, are proud to be the local hosts for DOVE, Desegregation of Virginia Education, Learn, Preserve, and Empower, and then become part of the archives at Old Dominion University. The most important aspect of the exhibit is the gathering of people's stories about the days of segregation, desegregation, and massive resistance. These stories, names, faces, and feelings to the events that many of us lived through, either personally or vicariously through news reports. And however these events were experienced, the times of segregation, desegregation, and massive resistance are seared into our memories. We encourage you and your family and friends to make appointments to share your stories with us. If you are unable to do so today, the exhibit will be here until December 14th, and we will be recording histories. You can just call CB and make an appointment on Wednesday and Thursday afternoons between 3:30 and 5, and Saturdays and Sundays from 2 to 5. There are a couple of exceptions in there because of the Thanksgiving holiday, but CB can tell you the specifics if you'd like to call or make an appointment. The oral histories will not only become part of the archives for the DOVE project, but also the archives for the Danville Historical Society. The Society recognizes the incredible importance of preserving these stories so that future generations will understand the struggles and triumphs of the past that inform both the present and the future. I believe it's also extremely important that this exhibit and program are here in this building. For decades, this building was a whites-only library. As such, it became the focus of the first protests against racial inequality in Danville. It also became a symbol for much that was wrong in our society, not just here in the city, or in the Commonwealth, or even in the South, but all across the country, where bigotry knows no geographical boundaries. Now this building can be a symbol of progress and hope as an asset for the entire community and not just a portion of it. One last thing I would like to say before introducing our two other local hosts is that our deepest gratitude goes to Paula Martin-Smith, a board member of the Historical Society and a Delta. She is the one responsible for bringing this exhibit to Danville and was the inspiration for the Historical Society, the sorority, and the museum to host it. Now, to speak on behalf of Delta Sigma Theta, here is Chapter President Marilyn Gunter.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks to all of you who have taken time from your busy schedule today to come to be with us. It's extremely heartwarming to know that here in 2012 we can come together in Danville as capital and bring to the forefront information that all our children and our children's children need to know as we move forward. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority is the largest sorority in the world, boasting 200,000 members worldwide. In Danville, we are 75 strong, and we are growing. At this time, I would like for all members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority to stay, whether you are a chapter member here or not. Please stand for Thank you very much. It is with deep appreciation and gratitude that we say to the Danville Historic Society and the museum here.
6 years I've been on the board, we realized we had the same people coming to the museum, and we talked about it, but talk doesn't change things, but we're trying to get diversity on our board, diversity in our programming, and we've made huge strides. We still want some young people on the board. It's been hard to recruit them, but if you know any that would like to serve, that's our biggest need right now. But we hope our programming reflects that this is everyone's museum. And we have outreach in the public schools. We take art and history programming to the schools. We have programs where we bring the school children into the museum. We couldn't do this without the support of Minnie Mott Foundation, Mortock, and Daly Foundations. But the city owns this property. They allow the museum to operate here, but we want this to be everyone's museum. And again, we feel privileged to help host this event. Thank you.
Just came in and left another event where we have about 500 people there celebrating some things for our city. And I'm honored to be here today with you. And a special thanks to, we used to call her Paula K, for inviting me to come and to represent our city, a city that I love, a city that I know very well. The thing about history, we review the past to improve the future. And we are growing and improving in our city, and I love it. I know the history about our city, about this location, and I won't get into all that. But I do have with me my nephew, my only nephew. You please stand, Philip, and remain standing. My nephew, Philip, his father, my brother Lonnie, was one of those who helped open the doors of this facility for everyone. And now his son, college graduate, doing well, is doing fine because of making a change for everyone. Thanks for being here, Philip. Thanks for being here. Danville has made many, many positive changes. I'm very, very proud of that. As a 15-year-old child, I too was in the era that Paula K is going to talk about, but also today I represent this city. I did not elect myself. The people did. That's the evidence right there. Okay? That's the evidence right there. So I think everyone in our path will not dictate our future. We'll continue to grow, continue to love everyone, continue to work together, to learn together, and to make certain that we are what God intended all of his children to be, whatever they want to be, okay? With belief in him, guidance in him, love and support from each other. Having said that, thank you.
Soul behind bringing this exhibit to Danville, and she had her own inspiration for doing so, as Marilyn alluded to, and as some of you may have read about in the newspaper. So something that we think is really a remarkable story. So Paula, would you please join us and tell us a little bit about how you discovered this exhibit.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today we are afforded a wonderful opportunity to contribute to the history and understanding of our community and Virginia as a whole as it moved through the years of segregation to desegregation. Let me give a little background as to how I became aware of this project. I was at a conference on aging in Lynchburg in early June, walked up to an AARP display, and as I read through the literature, I flipped the page and saw my picture as a 10-year-old. Then I asked the man at the booth, "Do you know who this is?" He said, "No." And then I struck a pose and asked again. And he questioningly said, "You?" I recall a little buzz of surprise and unbelief around the table. He immediately invited me to come to Lynchburg to participate in a community dialogue and record my story. Still, there were questions in my head as to why and how my picture. After attending the affair in Lynchburg, much like today, I came back home and sought collaboration from the 3 sponsoring organizations that have all helped to make this happen. Now, just a little bit about the little girl on the poster. Within the confines of her segregated community, she was afforded many opportunities, that of travel, of meeting the men and women of that time who were in the forefront of change, even introducing Jackie Robinson as the keynote speaker at a statewide NAACP convention. Yet movement in life in general was still limited simply by the color of her skin. There were separate facilities for blacks and whites. Her story is formed by that of her father, a well-known and respected businessman in Danville, and then president of First State Bank. He was a quiet and effective activist. After the U.S. Supreme Court declared that segregation on public busing was unconstitutional in 1956, her father decided to test the laws of the land. Remember, however, that this is one of many tests around the country. He asked her to board a city bus 1 block around the corner from First State Bank and ride 1 block before returning to him. The plan was to sit in the front and refuse to move if asked. She did as instructed. The bus driver refused to move the bus unless she moved to the back. She refused, stating her comfort where she was. A police officer was summoned, boarded the bus, and escorted her off. Telling her father what had happened, he filed suit against the city. Knowing that there is a wealth of experiences to reflect upon in this audience, I urge you to share today or make an appointment with CB here at the museum to get your portion of the puzzle laid on the table and meshed to tell our whole story for posterity. Let me introduce to you now the authors of this exhibit. AARP State Representatives, Brian Jacks.
Thank you.
Brian Jacks. And new member of the team, Janae Luck.
Because I accepted a career path that is straight in line with my personal mission in life. And it's so wonderful to be able to represent an organization that has a long history of social change and affecting so many, many lives. We have 38 million members in the United States. Wonderful organization with a long history of helping people, starting with our founder, who founded the Retired Teachers Association. And it brings me great joy to come to Danville. I immediately said, when I was hired, to Brian, yes, no question, I'll come to Danville. Because Danville is part of my home. I am living now in Northern Virginia, in Alexandria, so I drove from DC this morning. And I am so excited because this is where my father grew up. My last name is Luck, and I say that proudly because my papa had a barbershop on Main Street. And many of my family members still live here in Danville. And as I learned about this project, the desegregation of Virginia education, I immediately became excited because both of my parents, Ira and Katie Luck, are retired teachers. And my father actually went to Southside High School, and he walked to school past all segregated schools, and he went off to the military and became an educator. And being an educator in America says a lot, because you are again affecting the lives and making change for so many individuals. And he's doing well. He lives in Newport News, Virginia. He became one of the first black teachers in Hampton Roads, integrating schools there and being a strong advocate in his own career path. Became an assistant principal and a principal in Hampton Roads and affecting change again in that area. I'm so excited because, again, I'm a byproduct of that activism and that strong belief of education and how powerful that can be to someone's life. And I'm just excited that the Historical Society has welcomed AARP and the Deltas and so many different groups into supporting this opportunity to exchange information and to hear everyone's story. Because everyone has a story, but for those of us in my generation, we need to hear those stories. Because some of those stories are not in our history books. And often, some of those stories are not freely flowing through a lot of family generations. Some families are not talking about some of the stories. I learned when I was presenting this exhibit at the NAACP Virginia State Conference just a couple of weeks ago, that some of the stories about integration, desegregation are very painful. And as I was at the exhibit and asking people, you know, would you like to sign up to tell your story, one lady came up to me and she said, yes, I have a wonderful story to tell. I was one of the first 21 that integrated the schools in my county. And my county was affected very strongly by massive resistance. And she immediately, I said, well, wait, I got a little camera thing, let me record this. And she went on to tell me such a heart-wrenching story that not only did I cry, but she bawled. And I learned from that moment the power of this type of exhibit and these types of events. Because it's not just getting that therapeutic story out in the open, and educating and helping the younger generation know where we have been and where we not need to go in some areas, but where we can continue to grow. But what she did to me afterwards will stay with me throughout the rest of my career. She hugged me and said, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for making a difference and for what you're doing. Because it's not just helping me, but I know it's going to help all of my family members because I feel different. She said she had a moment of release of a lot of pain through those tears, a lot of heartache, a lot of silence that I think she kept for a long time. And I'm just excited that we have a campaign to tell your story about desegregation. But what's also exciting about AARP, we have wonderful campaigns to tell your story about your thoughts about Medicare, Social Security, long-term caregiving. We have campaigns and workshops and opportunities to come together with groups to help younger persons plan for retirement, understand Medicare open enrollment, questions, anything affecting your life as we age in America. AARP is there to help you tell that story, listen to you, receive that feedback from you, and affect change. And so I again extend that olive branch to say that I'm excited to be here, looking forward to coming back. And so I'm passing the word to say that if you are an organization that wants to have an opportunity to educate and partner and drum up some volunteers to make sure that the AARP message of goodwill and social change is going to continue even after today. So thank you for your time, thank you for being here, and we look forward to speaking with you throughout the afternoon. Thank you.
Collections librarian, and started looking around to figure out who had material about the history of school desegregation, and found that not many people were preserving it, not many people knew where to look. So I co-founded the Desegregation of Virginia Education Project. What I hoped to happen was this room. As the years went on and it wasn't happening, I thought, okay, well, I guess, you know, it was a cool idea, but I guess not. Then I started talking to a friend of mine in AARP, and he said, I don't know if you realize this, but we really care about diversity. And I thought, really? Because I didn't know that. I won't give the whole sales pitch because I think we just got that. Because, I don't mean that privately, I was just astounded by how much they care about it. So they said, let's get together, let's do an exhibit, and oh, we know somebody at NAACP, a Virginia office, that has a whole bunch of historic photographs. Maybe we could use those. Then we started talking to Urban League of Hampton Roads. We formed a coalition. We're going through the boxes of photographs, and we were looking for ones that we could match to a particular time and space. And then there was this one picture, this one little girl, and we didn't know who she was. And some of us said, so we don't know if she can't include it. We said, no, that's the cool thing. We don't know, and we want to know. That can be the whole slogan. What's her story? We can learn that by hearing your story. And when I had the opportunity to meet Paula, I was in this really dull meeting at OU. I know you've been in those meetings. You think, okay, I'm going to look at my email just to get through this. And I see this email, we met the little girl. And I apologize for calling her the little girl. She's from me. But yeah, so thank you, Paula, for making this the focus of all this. Thank you for bringing this all to Danville. I've got colleagues here of organization, Joe Smith, and from Fulton University, and Don from Duke, who's a Danville herself. And they're going to be taking oral histories. So if you would like to see, sign up back to back. We would be delighted to take your oral histories today. And the main question we're going to ask is, what's your story? If you were a student anytime from the 40s through the 90s in Virginia, if you were a parent of a child, if you were a teacher in particular, we want to know your story. We want to know, because all of us went through desegregation. What was it like for you? Tell us, and let history know that. We'll be giving a copy of this to not only Danville Historic, but the Danville Library also. Thank you so much. We're going to find the pump. We're going to show about half an hour of Locked Out, the Fall of Massive Resistance, which is some of you are watching it downstairs, I'm sorry, hold the plug on you. It is something done by PBS and the UVA Center for Politics. It's oral histories of folks in Prince Edward County, Charlottesville, and Warren County about their experience. So I don't know where the CD player is. The DVD is Joe. We're going to start doing the oral histories, and if you would like to sign up at the back of the room, I very much want to capture your experiences. So we've got two different people who will be doing oral histories. There's forms to sign to give us some information and to give us a release so that we have permission to retain those oral histories. And then this is going to be playing in the exhibit all week long.
To introduce Reverend Thurman Eccles. Reverend Eccles is pastor of Laurel Hills Missionary Baptist Church in Martinsville, Virginia, and he was very much in the forefront of the desegregation movement here in Danville, and is much noted for his historical knowledge of this community. Reverend Eccles.
Thank you very much. I guess I'm excited about being here. And I'll tell you, first of all, I'm here because Paula twisted my arm. I insisted that I'm coming here today to share some of the things that I have known growing up in Danville. I made a special effort because my family lost my brother-in-law, my oldest sister's husband, was just funeralized, and I came from there to here today to be with me. But I've got some fond memories and a lot of interest in there. I was very interested in the DVD. Linda Lambert, who was an attorney in the movie, dear friend of mine. He's my fraternity brother. His youngest brother was my best man. And I wed him when I went to Virginia Union, and several of the Lambert family members of were active part of the civil rights movement and also the history of Virginia. One of his sisters has two sisters. One was professor at community college, and the other one is a dentist, I think, and out in Kansas. But let me just give you a little digress, give you a little footnote, brief history of that. I saw that in the family. Leonard's sister, Ann, they call her Chick, she married Vernon Johns, one of Vernon Johns' sons. Vernon Johns, who pastored the First Baptist Church when the schools were closed up in Prince Edward County. Dr. Vernon Johns was the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery before King came. If you thought Martin Luther King was something, you should have heard Vernon Johns. Dr. Vernon Johns, who was president of Virginia Seminary College, Lynchburg, also pastored the Court Street Baptist Church twice. And most times in Baptist church, you don't get a second chance to come back to the same church. I've been in the church where I am for 36 years, so I don't even want to come back after these years. But growing up in Danville, and I saw Oliver Hill that I knew also in Richmond. Going to Richmond, I'll tell you maybe a little bit about that later. I saw Oliver Hill and some of the others. But I remember back in the 50s growing up in Danville, when the schools were closed up in Prince Edward County, Barbara Johns was the niece, as I said, of Dr. Vernon Johns, who led the protests and the civil rights movement down in Alabama. My brother-in-law, who we funeralized today, was from Birmingham, Alabama. And he had some stories to tell. I remember when he came to Danville back in the 50s. And he used to tell me, and later on, they used to call Birmingham, the Lincoln Street Baptist Church there in Birmingham, and there was some interesting stories. But let me tell you a little bit about Danville. I was born here in Danville, right down the street off of Robert Street. I was born in an apartment house. Grew up, I lived on Holbrook Street, and there was an interesting, Holbrook Street was like the village growing up. If you were a professional person, you either lived on, well, not all, there were some, perhaps on South Main Street and perhaps some of the other parts in North Danville. But Holbrook Street was like the Mecca. It was like Harlem. That if you were a professional person, you lived in the Holbrook Street Raw Street. I grew up, was baptized at the Holbrook Street Baptist Church, and Paul and I, we grew up and we attended that church, and we went to school together. Paula was an excellent student. That's how I got to go to college, because I looked on her paper. Some of her answers, it helped me along the way. But Paula's uncle, her father, and maybe you'll hear more about that, her father, well, let me just tell a little bit growing up, and I'll tell you a little bit about leaving Danville, going away. But growing up in Danville was perhaps an interesting experience. Some of the young people growing up there, and I see what has happened after the election, and so many young people down in Mississippi. I said, how can they be so bitter? They don't even know what the struggle is all about. And they're protesting and acting foolishly and ugly and all the other adjectives that I can describe, but I won't do that since I'm a Baptist preacher and y'all are good religious folk. I won't indulge your intelligence by telling you. But I think it's a shame that we've gotten this far in America and that we have to act like that. We've gone out. Our father fought in World War II. I later on went to the army, served in the Vietnam era. And here we are in 2012. But growing up down Holbrook Street and in the community of Danville, right, I was very fortunate. Right across on Holbrook Street, where the building has been torn down now, there was a library right there on Holbrook Street, William F. Grassley Library. And I was very fortunate because I could go to the library in 2 or 3 minutes from my house. Now, how many of us grow up in a community where there's a library, black or white? So I was very fortunate. Later on, I was a page there in the library, and I used to read, and it paid off later on because some of my professors would call a book or an author, they couldn't remember the name, and I could just tell them. One of the professors said, how do you know so many names in books. I said, well, I'll have to work in the library. Also, growing up at the Calvary Baptist Church, and I went to segregated schools, Westmoreland, later on Langston, and it was just, it was an experience. It was just going to school, and I loved to go to school. But behind Calvary Baptist Church, there was a church, there was a school. It was John L. Berkeley, J. L. Berkeley, who my nephew, who father was Berkeley, he attended that school, but I could not attend John Berkeley. We used to call, never hardly knew it was Berkeley Elementary School. You know what we used to call the school? I'm glad you asked me. We used to call it the White School. And we used to crawl, there was a hole that we had made under the fence, that we used to crawl under the fence to play ball. But no one, I don't think anybody ever ran us off or told us to get off of the property. We just played ball back there. We would say Westmoreland, growing up with them, and just say, meet me at the White School in the morning at 8 o'clock. And we're going to play ball, softball, baseball, football, whatever. We played there. All right. But interesting enough, segregated schools probably did something for us that was very good that we've lost. We had some of the best teachers probably that this country has ever produced. They were graduates of historically black colleges, Hampton, Virginia Union. If I don't call your school, don't be mad at me. A&T and Virginia State, Norfolk State, and historically black schools because they could not go to other schools. Later, many of our teachers went north to get a master's degree or advanced degrees up in Columbia, New York University and other schools because they could not go to UVA and other schools in the South. But growing up, it was, I guess, and I was talking about children being bitter. I'm not bitter. At this age, I'm not bitter. I'm better. I'm a better person because of my experiences growing up in Danville and the experiences that I've had. I've had some experiences that are unique to any child growing up in America, and I'm grateful. All of my brothers, grandchildren have finished college, except one is in high school. Another generation, 2 of them in college. So we've been blessed. And I say, and my mother said this to us, and I said it last night at the Lord Baptist Church. My mother instilled in us at an early age. She said, if you get something in your head, can't nobody take it away from you.
Yes, sir.
All right? And my mother instilled that in me. And we have taught our children, and we have supported other children to go on to school. But growing up in Danville, and I'll tell you a little bit about the 60s, Martin Luther King came to Danville twice, only spoke at 2 places. And I challenged somebody, and I said, if you can tell me and document, don't just oral history, you got to show me and document where Martin Luther King came to NFL. March 1963, Martin Luther King came and spoke at the City Auditorium. You know how I know?
It's there. You were there.
I was there. Yeah. I think it was around March 31st. I can't remember all the dates, but it was in March. Later, I think he came back in July, spoke at the High Street Baptist Church. Martin Luther King never demonstrated, never went to jail in Danville, which is very interesting. And I think some of that was the Birmingham movement was being, I guess, escalated, and Birmingham was a hot spot of the civil rights movement. But Martin Luther King said this. He said Danville had the most brutal police force that he ever had seen anywhere in the South. Now that said something about Danville. He said Danville had the worst police force. Excuse me, Mayor Saunders, but he was a part of it. Mayor Saunders and his brother, who's now going on to be with the Lord. He was there in college, and, but he said, Martin King said, Danville had the most brutal police force. And I'll tell you why. He probably said that.
We were not part of the police department, we were part of the movement.
Oh, excuse me.
Right. Exactly. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Your kindness shall never be obliterated. Thank you, Mayor. Right quickly, and I know some others have to talk, right quickly. And maybe if you have a few questions. But right after Martin Luther King came in March of '63, and let me back the train up. There were a group of students who had come to this place right here, to the library. My sister was a part of that group, and Robert Williams was an attorney and several others, and I had a program. put the marker, and I put some of that history in that program when we put the marker there. But the chairs were taken up, and I told my little granddaughter today, who lives in Hampton, I told her when we came by the building, they took the chairs up, that we could not sit down here in this building. But let me back to the training of Miss Florence Robertson. Now, I need to write some of this down because I'm getting old and can't remember all of this. Was a librarian here in the 60s. I was a page at the Graston, at the John William F. Graston. I would come here in the summer, and when the section was taking vacation, I used to clean up this building as a student. But in early years, I couldn't even come here, but I could come here and clean the building up and clean the restrooms up, whatever. But the demonstration started May of 1963. And what they did and what they tried to do for several days, didn't say anything in the newspapers. There was nothing on television about the demonstrations today. And so Eccles being very something, I don't know what to say for me. I said, let's go out in the street, let's block the traffic up. Well, we did. And once we started blocking the traffic up, and people were afraid to come downtown, and I think somebody said, if you want to hurt the business, then hit them dead in the pocketbook. And that's where it really started as far as the demonstration. All right, quickly. June 10th, and we talked about, my family teased me about that, Reverend Porter. My daddy told me stay at home. June 10th, 1963. Next year will be, what, 50 years. Dad told me to stay at home. Don't go downtown demonstrating. But I had something, I had fire in my belly. I went down singing on We Shall Overcome. Woke up this morning with my mind on freedom. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And policeman came up on the steps and said, Eccles, turn around. You're under arrest. They were just going to arrest me and maybe one or two others because we were the leaders and others would go home. They didn't go home. They said, if you put Eccles Thurman in jail, we're going to jail with him. And that's the morning that they put the fire hoses, washed us down in the streets and people. But that night, that's when Bloody Monday took place. We were already at the City Farm in, well, maybe Tuesday they had taken us to the City Farm. But that's the night they beat people up. That's the reason why Martin Luther King says, they beat people in there. And I've got pictures. They're in SNCC's student nonviolent coordinating videos, both leaflet where they beat people in the head. There are about 60-some people taken to Winslow Hospital, which was an all-black hospital on Winslow Street, whose name was after Miss Catherine Winslow Love, who lived down the street. There was her father, who was a physician here, and the hospital was named after him. Fast forward, but beat people up, and Danville became one of the hot spots, especially in Virginia. Danville probably is listed or billed as the hottest spot in Virginia in the civil rights movement. There was no other place in Virginia that received the attention later on. And of course, all the national leaders came here from SNCC. I could name all the people, there are lists of people that came to Danville. So the first black policeman was hired in Danville. His name was Bill Terry. He was from Texas. There were no other policemen hired before then, black or African American, prior to the demonstration. Interesting enough, I have a picture in my office. One of the first black policemen in Richmond, they were hired, was from Danville. His name was Dr. P. Day, who lived in North Danville. He had to go all the way to Richmond back in '46, and he was one of the first black policemen in Richmond. And it's interesting enough, they didn't hire all of them the same day and all the other policemen. They would hire one on Monday, Tuesday. The system has something to pay for. They would hire one on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe one on Friday. And the catch-22 with that is when promotions came up, the one was hired on Monday had more seniority than the man on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. I tell you, the system is something. So, went off to, I left Danville in 65, a few more years later after that. And thanks to Paula's father, he was on the board of trustees at Virginia Union, and didn't even have $10 to put my application for admission. Paula's father took my application. He was on the board, and you know, if you're on the board, took it to the president. So this is one of my boys that grew up in the church, grew up with my daughter. I never did pay that $10, but I've given the school some money since then. So I paid for it one day. But met a lot of interesting things. But some of the students, let me just tell you this, I'll stop. Some of the students, I think it was in 64, 63, 64, 65, when some of the students went to GW. That's when GW was integrated. I wanted to go my senior year, but then all my classmates, and I said, well, 1 year, and I stayed there. But Patricia, I could probably, the Adams children, there were several children that went to GW and graduated from high school. That's when GW. But isn't it interesting enough to know that it's interesting how in 1954, May 17, in Danville, integrated around 1970. That's a long time in it.
It is.
From 54 to what? To 70. The last class at Langston was 70. And one of my brothers was the last class at Langston. So 71, they probably integrated and went to GW. But it's been a long journey. But I don't feel no waste time. I'm a better person growing up in Danville. I love Danville, and I try to speak well of Danville wherever I go. And I'm not ashamed to tell people that I'm from the last capital of the Confederacy. And here we are. And Governor Southern mentioned that here we are today. So we've come a long ways as a people. And I think that we need to work together. America's changing, y'all. Now, whether we want change or not, I took a course in social change. Whether we want change or whatever is coming. Sam Cooke says it's been a long time coming, but change has come. So growing up in Danville has been a great experience. Are there any questions right quickly? No, good party.
Were you ranked in 65? Is that your graduating class?
Graduated, one of my classmates was C.B. Claiborne, Claudius Barrett Claiborne Jr., who was the first African-American to play under Big Boopers at Duke University. C.B. didn't play much at Duke because of, he was a great, but C.B. Claiborne did not get a basketball scholarship to Duke. He was a presidential scholar. He has a PhD and has 4 degrees. And I went to see him down there. He's in Texas teaching at the university. But he was one of the students that went to Duke, played against Charlie Scott, but he didn't get the playing time that Charlie Scott loved at Duke. Yes, he was a valedictorian. Oh, wow. That was called Paula and Cherie were gone. She graduated. Yes, she was gone. Well, that's a part of history there. He wasn't there, so sorry, but she left. So if you get out of your space, somebody else take your space. Thank you.
Folks, we invite you to go downstairs now to see the exhibit. Take a little time. There's also some refreshments downstairs that you can enjoy. Again, please sign up. Don't be shy. We'd love to get your story.
Are you ready? Yes. My name is Odaris Jones, and I'm sure you remember me. I taught English at Southside in 1967.
And you were part of the integrated schools, or was it segregated school then?
It was segregated then.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I'm Marilyn Gunter, president of the Danville Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. We are collaborating with the Historic Society and the Museum of Fine Arts here in Danville to bring the Dove exhibit. It is very important in our minds that everyone have an opportunity to tell their story of desegregation of Virginia schools and other facilities. We're pleased today to have 60 plus people in attendance, and we're very happy that AARP saw the need to put this in place. Thank you very much, and we hope that it will be a benefit to our community as well as a larger community abroad.
Wonderful, thank you.
Bridget Wilson.
And you are?
I migrate up here in Danville, Virginia.
Okay.
My name is Jacqueline Wilson.
Jacqueline Wilson.
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember. And he died in 1970.
Okay.
Train accident. And he was the assistant. My husband was assistant football coach with Ralph Hope.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen your daddy. I haven't seen him. He disappeared on me.
Yeah.
But I really missed. I always tried to find the Lux here in Danville.
Yes. Well, we actually, Daddy is in Newport News. Forget. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No problem.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Coral Lunderman Towns. I am a native of Danville, Virginia, and was actually living in Danville during the 50s and 60s. I was a student at John Mercer Langston High School during the desegregation movement here in Danville. During my junior year, I was actually arrested picketing outside of People's Drugstore on Main Street, where my aunt Helen Harris actually worked during that time. I spent the night in jail and was bailed out the next day by Mrs. Hughes, who ran the funeral home here in Danville. When I went for my pre-trial interview, along with my mother, and we told them about my family, they found out that all of my brothers and sisters were either college graduates or getting ready to graduate from college. I was also an honor roll student and actually graduated third in my class from my senior year in 1965. When I went to court, the day that they told me I was to appear, and I walked up to the officer and told him who I was and asked him where did I need to go, and he looked on his docket and he said, I do not have a Coral Towns for trial today. And I never heard from the court again. They never called me to be tried for anything. And I think that it was because of the background of my family during my interview and the fact that I was an honor roll student who was college bound after I graduated, that changed their mind about even taking me to court.
Wow. And what school did you go to, and where did you, let's wait till the door shut. So tell me about what it was like going to school at your school.
We had a wonderful school, even though
go?
we were segregated. We were at John Mercer Langston, and the teachers were very, very up on their subject matter. We had all the clubs and things that anybody else has. As a matter of fact, I was a member of the drama club. I sung in the choir, an outstanding choir. I also wrote stories in our literary magazine that were actually published as a part of our literary magazine publication for the years that I was there. We were known in the state for our football and basketball teams, and we had a wonderful relationship with all of our friends. So even though we were segregated, we felt that we got first grade education during our stay at Langston. And that has proved true since there are so many of us who have made such an impact throughout the nation, becoming doctors, lawyers, teachers, you name it, since we graduated from Langston.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for telling your story.
You're quite welcome.
You can see this painting, the birds.
Excuse me, what were they?
Back then, they gonna put you in they go this way, just like that. Be boys, and they go when they cross that way. They'll teach you about that. And
That's Pat Boxdale, Patricia March Day, she's dead now. But that's her, I said, changed families. I don't see anybody else. That's what I want to know.
Brought it here.
She saw it on the somewhere. It's in that.
I see these people, I'm just trying to see who they are.
One, two. No, I live in Shattuck. It would have been somewhere like this.
It's gonna be a long Hi, Dan.
It's a present.
Well, my brother-in-law.
That's great. Yep. Come on, Mary. Don't mess with Rod.
I got a lost spirit.
She ought to know her husband. I would all out there, they know, and look at wrong behind their suits and call for that Wayne. It worked out quite good. When it does hit, so I can see my family.
Need to understand that times are changing. In the 60s, when they were talking about the schools and how massive resistance was set in place. And you know, I'm not trying to be prophetic, but I can see some of that same stuff coming back now. You know, doing things to resist change, just to resist change. So that was my little story.
Thank you, yes. All right, so our goal is, does anyone else have something they'd like to share for the group? This is the time to do that. Yes, come, please stand up, join us, come on.
Good afternoon. Well, myself too, myself along with Marilyn, of course we're almost from the same community, well, we are from the same community. But I am so thankful and blessed that I did not experience, I shouldn't say blessed that I didn't experience, but I mean, I remember all of the things that were there in our faces and the things we had to do from going, you know, to the top of the movie theater, to riding the city bus in the back, to going to, what's the nation's name? The rest of the truck stop, Wayside Diner, which is up from us, and seeing the sign there that said for colors only, and we couldn't go inside or, you know, order our food from inside. So I am thankful and blessed that I saw it all, but I didn't have any bad experiences from it. So, and my family and all were involved, and it was, I'm just thankful for where we are today.
My experience was probably a little bit different because I'm not from the South. I'm from Chicago. And so our type of segregation was pretty much economic in that we were not allowed to live, or houses were not being sold to blacks in certain areas. We were all in pretty much small crowded, large crowded areas, which they probably would have called slums. We probably would have called slums. So we were kept in an area where we were not allowed.
One of my parents was sick, and they really wanted me to come home because they wanted people in the community to know that they had a child that finished college and that they were proud of and wanted me to work in Danville. So I went to the school board here and applied for a job in accounting. I had already done my internship with Manufacturers Hanover Trust in New York City. So when I attempted to go through the interview, I was first told that the job was closed. I have much respect for this lady, Dorothy Harris. At that time, Dorothy Harris was the principal at Grove Park Elementary School. My father was the janitor. And I went back to Grove Park to tell my family what had happened. And she said, I know that job isn't closed because I have the notice on my board here in this office. And she looked at it and she said, no, it's not closed. She said, let me call someone. So she called this individual, and then I was allowed to have an interview. At first, they said the job was closed. And so I went back to the interview, and the gentleman told me that I was overqualified, that I had a BS degree in accounting. And the person tried to get me to tell him what working capital was and what, one asked me all these questions, and I had worked on various computer equipment in New York City when I did my internship. And he said, well, you're overqualified. And I had already planned to give this job to a lady in my office who this would be a promotion for her.
And he found out that I was black. He said it's not for rent. It looked like everywhere I would go, and they would find out that I was black, they would say it's not for rent. So I had a white friend who I had taught for, and she said, the next time you find a building, I'm going to go rent that building, and you just sub-rent for me. And that's what happened. She rented the building, and I rented from her. But in the end, I was offered to buy the business from the lady that I rented from, but I didn't. I went in another direction. But I can imagine what it was like back then, doing some of the things that I went through.
Okay, I'm Joyce Glaze. I'm from Danville. I teach at Virginia State now. I'm a professor, but I've been in Danville all my life. I went to Canberra School.
Tell us your name. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Two-room school at that time, and then we slipped to the city, and I went to city schools. But of course, I was a part of Dorothy Moore and all those people that were a part of the civil rights movement at the time. Dorothy lived right beside me and her mom. So it's been an interesting haul all my life. I went to North Carolina A&T, and I did my thesis on the civil rights movement in Danville. And I had a white professor, and he said, I'm from Danville. I thought he was going to give me an F, but he actually gave me an A. He said, I went to Stratford. He said, I taught in Stratford, and I moved to A&T when I taught. But I talked about A&T at that time, not allowing blacks to go to A&T. But life has been quite interesting. I served on Danville City Council, and I've served on many boards with governors and all, and helped in many elections. So my thing is politics and education. I got my doctor's degree from the University of Virginia, which was really hard to get black folks there, and they're still not into black folks. We still got problems, but things are going better. Yeah.
Well, appreciate you being here.
And of course, let me just say, your father and my father were good friends. He was your grandfather, he was a barber, and your
I said he didn't say anything that wasn't true. And Bill Clinton said,
This point that today is not enough. But what it takes is that it takes courageous individuals to be leaders, showcase leadership in a positive way.
That's right. That's right.
To really spark into
You don't try to understand the child. It seems strange to you, and that's probably what you missed a lot out on, that they didn't know, the background, the struggles. If I live in a glass house,